I wasn't expecting anything from him. Not a call, not a text, not even one of those half-hearted, hope you're doing well messages people send just to ease their conscience. We hadn't spoken properly in months, ever since the argument about the inheritance. So, when his name lit up on my phone one December afternoon, I just stared at it. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. You know that weird pause you get when you don't want to answer, but your heart still jumps? That's exactly how it felt. My thumb hovered over the screen like I was about to touch fire. But it wasn't a call this time. It was a message. Short, simple, Christmas dinner. At the house. You should come. That's all it said. No apology. No explanation. Just an invitation dressed up like a command that I put the phone down on the table and sat back in my chair. The snow outside had started falling heavier by then, fat white flakes sticking to the window. It was quiet in my apartment, too quiet. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak in the walls, and my own heartbeat pounding harder than it should have been over 6 words. Why now? Why invite me after everything? Was this supposed to be some olive branch? Or a trap? I kept rereading the message, like maybe it would change if I stared at it long enough. The words should got under my skin. Not, I'd love for you to come. Not even, I miss you. Just, you should come. Like it was my duty, and maybe, once upon a time, I would have jumped at the chance. I would have convinced myself that this was him trying, that maybe he wanted to fix things. But that was before the inheritance, before I realized how far he was willing to go when money was involved. Still, I'd be lying if I said my chest didn't tighten a little. Because no matter how angry or hurt I was, he was still my dad. That part of me, the kid who once ran to the door when he came home from work, hasn't fully died yet. And I hate that. I picked the phone back up, turned it over in my hand. The cold glass against my palm felt heavier than it should. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I found myself staring out the window, watching the snow drift under the streetlight. It was the kind of scene you'd see in a movie, soft, quiet, almost peaceful. Except inside me, it was anything but peaceful. That night, I left the message on read. I told myself I'd deal with it tomorrow. But I knew deep down, I wasn't going to be able to ignore it. If you've ever had someone you love suddenly turn into someone you barely recognize, you'll understand what I mean when I say the inheritance changed everything. That it's strange how money, something that's supposed to make life easier, can rip relationships apart faster than anything else. For me, it started with a phone call, the one where Dad first brought it up. I can still hear his voice, that casual tone he used like he was asking me to pick up milk from the store. Listen, about the inheritance your mom left behind. I think it'd make more sense if I handled it. You don't really need that kind of responsibility right now. At first, I thought he was joking. I actually laughed. But then there was that silence on the line. That heavy silence where you realize the other person is completely serious. My heart dropped. I remember staring at the wall in my apartment, tracing the cracks in the paint with my eyes while my mind scrambled to process what he was saying. He wants me to give it to him. Just like that. My mom's final gift to me, handed over like it was nothing. When I said no, his voice changed. That warmth, fake or not, was gone. What replaced it was sharp, almost cold. Don't be selfish. You owe me that much, after everything I've done for you. Those words cut deeper than he probably even realized. Selfish. As if wanting to keep what my mother had set aside for me was selfish. As if all the late nights she worked, all the sacrifices she made, meant nothing if I didn't pass it along to him. That was the moment I knew things had shifted between us. The air felt different after that. Calls turned into arguments. Arguments turned into silence. And eventually, months passed without us speaking. And now, here he was, inviting me to Christmas dinner like none of that had happened. Like we hadn't torn each other apart over money that wasn't even his to begin with. I sat there, remembering the weight of those conversations. The tightness in my chest. The way my hands shook after hanging up the phone. I remember slamming the fridge door shut one night, just to feel the sound echo in the apartment, because I didn't know what else to do with all that anger. And yet, here I was, still staring at his invitation, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was a part of him that regretted it, that wanted to fix things. Or maybe I was just setting myself up to be hurt all over again. The snow outside kept falling, covering the streets in white. I couldn't help but think about how quickly everything gets buried, how the world erases what was there before. And I wondered if that's what he wanted to do with us. Bury the truth under a layer of holiday cheer. The message sat there on my phone for 2 whole days before I even thought about replying. 2 days of me walking past it, picking it up, unlocking the screen, and then locking it again like some kind of ritual. It was ridiculous how much power 6 words had over me. I kept asking myself the same question. Why go? Why put myself in that position, knowing how it might end? But right behind that thought came another one I couldn't silence. What if this was the olive branch? What if this was the moment he finally wanted to fix things, and I let it slip by because of my pride? That's the cruel part about family. No matter how much they hurt you, there's always that whisper in your chest telling you to give them another chance. That I'd sit on the edge of my bed at night, staring at the half-packed bag leaning against the wall. Some nights I'd convince myself not to go. I'd say out loud, "Nope, not worth it. Not falling for it." Then I'd wake up the next morning and catch myself scrolling through train tickets. Just in case. One night, I actually stood in front of the mirror, coat already on, keys in my hand, rehearsing what I'd say to him if I went. I looked myself dead in the eyes and muttered, "I'm not giving it to you, Dad. I'm not." My reflection didn't look convinced, and maybe that was what scared me most. Not that he'd try to take the inheritance again, but that part of me would cave if I saw him face to face. That somehow, the weight of his disappointment would push me into betraying myself. The days crept closer to Christmas, and the streets started to glow with decorations. Every shop window was dressed up in lights and fake snow. Every cafe smelled like cinnamon and roasted coffee. People walked around with shopping bags and smiles, like the whole world was in on a secret I wasn't part of. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table, phone in one hand, mug of cold coffee in the other, running through every possible outcome. Scenario 1. He apologizes. We laugh, we eat, maybe, just maybe, we start to rebuild. Scenario 2. He pretends nothing ever happened, and I sit there swallowing my anger all night. Scenario 3. It's a setup. A guilt trip in disguise. A chance to corner me in front of everyone. The truth is, I didn't believe in scenario 1. Not really. But even so, on the morning of Christmas Eve, I found myself pulling that half-packed bag out from the corner and finishing what I'd started. Folding sweaters, zipping up the suitcase, telling myself it was just dinner, just one night. But I knew, deep down, it was never going to be just dinner. The train ride felt longer than it should have. Each stop, each announcement over the intercom, just stretched out the tension already pressing down on my chest. I kept staring at the reflection in the train window, my own tired face floating against a backdrop of blurred snow. I thought about turning back more than once. I even rehearsed excuses in my head. Sorry, last-minute plans. Got sick, couldn't make it. But my hands stayed folded tight in my lap, and my body just kept moving forward, like it knew. Something my mind didn't. By the time I reached the street I grew up on, it didn't even feel real. The snow had blanketed everything, softening the edges of the world, making even the cracks in the pavement look cleaner than I remembered. And then I saw it. Our house. My house once, though it didn't feel like mine anymore. Strings of Christmas. Lights wrapped around the porch railings, glowing against the snow. The windows pulsed with warm golden light, and through the glass I could see shadows moving, laughter spilling faintly into the cold night air. For a moment, it looked perfect. The kind of scene you'd see on a holiday card. Family gathered. Cozy warmth, everything right in the world. But inside me, everything was tight. My fingers dug into the handle of my suitcase as I stood at the edge of the driveway, just staring. It hit me how much distance those few steps really carried. It wasn't just concrete and snow. It was months of silence, words we couldn't take back, and one truth we'd been avoiding. He had asked me to give up something that wasn't his, and I had said no. I walked slowly up the driveway, each crunch of snow under my boots louder than it should have been. My breath came out in little clouds, vanishing as quickly as they formed. At the door, I hesitated. My hand hovered just above the handle, my heart hammering like I was about to face a firing squad instead of a family gathering. And here's the thing, I could hear them. The muffled sound of plates clinking, a burst of laughter, someone calling for more wine. It was jarring, like life had gone on perfectly without me. Like my absence hadn't mattered. I took a deep breath, fingers grazing the cold steel of the handle. For a split second, I thought about walking away, about turning around, dragging my suitcase back through the snow, and pretending I'd never come. But then the door opened before I could decide. Warm light spilled out, hitting me in the face. The smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and pine needles all at once. And there she was, my stepmother, smiling like I hadn't been erased for months. "Oh, you made it," she said, voice bright, too bright. And behind her, I caught sight of him. My dad, standing tall, drink in hand, that same unreadable expression he always wore when he wanted the upper hand. I stepped inside. And just like that, the trap was sprung. The moment my boots hit the hardwood floor, the warmth of the house wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. The air smelled of roasted turkey, nutmeg, and that artificial pine sent my stepmother love to spray everywhere. For a second, my body wanted to relax, to sink into the comfort of familiarity. But my mind wouldn't let me. Everyone turned when I walked in. A ripple went through the room, like the pause before a second verse of a song. Then, almost too quickly, everyone started smiling. "Look who finally showed up," my uncle boomed, raising his glass as if I were some long-lost prodigal son returning from war. My stepmother rushed forward and hugged me tight, her perfume so sweet it almost choked me. She pulled back, holding my arms, her eyes scanning me like she was inspecting damage. "You look good. You must be eating well." It was a compliment, but something about the way she said it made me feel like a specimen, not family. And then, Dad. He didn't move right away. He stood across the room, glass in hand, watching me. No smile, no words, just that long stare that used to make me straighten up as a kid. Finally, he lifted his drink, gave me a nod, and said, "Glad you made it." That was it. No hug, no warmth, just a nod. Like we were business associates meeting at a conference instead of father and child reconnecting after months of silence. That I forced a smile, let out a breathy "yeah, glad to be here." Even though I wasn't sure I meant it. The room quickly filled back up with chatter. People went back to their conversations, their laughter, their plates of food. I found myself moving through the space on autopilot, shaking hands, exchanging hugs, answering questions I didn't really want to answer. "How's work? Still living in the city? Met anyone special yet?" It all sounded normal. Too normal. And that was the problem. The whole night felt staged, like a play where everyone knew their lines except me. I couldn't shake the sense that every laugh, every smile was just a little too forced, a little too rehearsed. Like they'd been waiting for me to walk in so the real act could begin. At one point, I caught my dad watching me from across the room. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't even pretending. He just stood there, swirling his drink, eyes fixed on me like he was calculating something. And for a split second, I felt 12 years old again, caught doing something wrong, waiting for the lecture. I laughed too loud at a joke my cousin made, just to break the tension. I felt my face flush, not from the warmth of the house, but from the weight of all those eyes, some of them pretending not to look, others staring too long. That I picked up a plate, loaded it with food I didn't have the appetite for, and sat down. Around me, forks scraped plates, glasses clinked, music played faintly in the background. But beneath it all, I could hear it, the silence between me and him. It stretched across the table like a fault line, invisible but ready to split everything open, and I knew. It was only a matter of time before it did. Dinner was in full swing when it happened. Plates stacked high with food, candles flickering, wine glasses catching the light. For a while, I tried to convince myself I could get through the evening. If I just kept my head down, smile when someone looked my way, nod when they talked, pretend. But pretending never lasts long, does it? Halfway through the meal, Dad stood up. The scrape of his chair against the floor cut through the chatter. He raised his glass, and instantly, the room quieted. That's the thing about him. He's always known how to command attention. He cleared his throat, flashing that grin he reserved for audiences, not family. "Well, I think we can all agree it's been a memorable year." A few chuckles, some nods. My chest tightened. "Family's the most important thing," he continued, voice warm, practiced. "And I'm grateful to have all of you here tonight. We've been through ups and downs, sure, but in the end, family comes together. That's what matters." People murmured in agreement, raising their glasses. I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, already bracing myself. Because I knew. That tone. I knew that setup. And then he went for it. Of course, sometimes family means making sacrifices. Doing the right thing, even when it's not easy. We've all had to make hard choices this year, some of us more than others. His eyes flicked toward me, just for a second, but it was enough. My stomach dropped. He kept going, casual, like it was just another story to tell. I mean, imagine inheriting something you don't know what to do with. It takes maturity to realize maybe someone else could handle it better. That's what being selfless looks like, putting the family above yourself. A ripple of polite laughter went through the table. My face burned. My hands curled into fists under the tablecloth. I forced a smile, but inside, every word felt like a blade twisting deeper. He wasn't just making a toast, he was rewriting the narrative, casting me as the selfish one while painting himself as the noble father who only wanted what was best. And the worst part? They bought it. I could see it in the nods, the murmurs, the way a cousin clapped him on the back. They believed him. Or maybe they wanted to. It was easier than questioning the truth that I pushed the food around my plate, keeping my head down. I didn't trust my voice. I didn't trust myself not to explode. The laughter carried on, glasses clinked again, and the conversation moved forward as if nothing had happened. But for me, everything had stopped. The room blurred, the voices faded, and all I could hear was the echo of his words. Selfless. Sacrifice. Family above yourself. I swallowed hard. But it tasted like betrayal. It's strange how the loudest rooms can sometimes make you feel the most alone. Everyone went back to their meals, back to their conversations, as if Dad's little speech had been just another holiday toast. The clatter of forks on china, the bursts of laughter, the scraping of chairs, it all swirled around me like white noise. But inside, I was quiet. Too quiet. My plate sat in front of me, full of food I couldn't bring myself to eat. The turkey that smelled so good when I walked in now looked gray, lifeless. My fork dragged aimlessly through mashed potatoes, carving patterns I didn't even see. Every now and then, I felt a glance slide over me. A cousin pretending not to stare. An aunt whispering something to the person beside her. And then, of course, Dad, occasionally locking eyes with me, just long enough to remind me that he knew exactly what he'd done, and that he was enjoying it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam my glass down, to tell everyone the truth, to rip the mask off his carefully constructed image. But my voice, it felt stuck in my throat, like it had been chained down by years of conditioning. Years of don't talk back, show respect, he's your father. I stayed silent. The conversations around me blurred into static, and that's when the flashbacks started. I saw myself as a kid, sitting in this very dining room, legs swinging under the chair, looking up at him like he hung the moon. I remembered how he used to tell stories at the table, larger-than-life tales that made everyone laugh. And me? I believed every word. I used to think there was nothing he couldn't do. Then another memory. A Sunday afternoon, me, holding up a drawing I'd made. "That's nice," he'd said without looking up from his paper. I remembered the way my little chest had swelled at first, then deflated, the silence that followed louder than any insult could have been. And now here I was again, grown, sitting at the same table, feeling that same silence. Except this time, it was suffocating. I stared at my reflection in the wine glass, distorted and fragile. My face looked older, tired, hollowed out by disappointment. I wondered how many more times I'd let him do this to me. How many more dinners I'd sit through, biting my tongue while he turned me into the villain in his story. A burst of laughter jolted me back to the present. Someone had told a joke at the far end of the table. People clapped, wiped tears from their eyes. I looked at them, and it hit me. They weren't thinking about me. They weren't weighing the truth. To them, this was just Christmas dinner. And to me, it was the slow unraveling of everything I thought I had left with him. I stayed silent. Not because I agreed, not because I forgave, but because sometimes silence is the only shield you have left. And God, did it feel heavy. I don't even remember how I ended up in the kitchen. One moment I was staring at the half-empty glass in front of me. The next I was on my feet, slipping away from the table while everyone else was distracted with dessert. The hum of laughter followed me down the hallway, muffled by the walls, until I stepped into the dimly lit kitchen and closed the door behind me. For the first time all night, it was quiet. Just the faint buzz of the fridge and the tick of the old clock above the sink. I leaned against the counter, my chest tight, my hands shaking. I needed a second. Just 1 second where I wasn't on display, where I could breathe without the weight of his eyes on me. But of course, He followed. The door creaked open, and there he was, Dad, silhouetted in the doorway, glass still in his hand. He didn't look drunk, but there was a looseness to the way he carried himself, the kind that comes when someone knows they're in control. "There you are," he said, like he'd just caught me sneaking out. "Thought you might slip away without saying goodnight." I didn't answer. I couldn't trust my voice yet. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The kitchen light cast shadows across his face, sharpening every line, making him look older than I remembered, and harder, too. "You've been quiet tonight," he said, swirling the liquid in his glass. "People notice these things. Makes you look resentful." That word, resentful, it hit me like a slap that I finally spoke. My voice low but steady. "What you did out there wasn't right." He smirked. "What did I do? Made a toast? Spoke about family. If that upset you, maybe you're carrying guilt I didn't put there." My jaw tightened. "Don't twist this. You humiliated me. You made me the selfish one in front of everyone, when you know exactly what you asked me to do." For the first time, his smile slipped. Just a fraction, but enough. He set his glass down on the counter, leaning in slightly. "I asked you to think about the bigger picture, about what's best for this family. That inheritance, you don't even know what to do with it. I could have put it to use. Protected it. Protected you." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "Protected me? No. You wanted control. You wanted what wasn't yours. And when I said no, you decided to punish me." His eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger breaking through the calm facade. "Watch your tone." There it was. The same command I'd heard my whole life. But something in me snapped this time. I wasn't a kid anymore, and I wasn't going to fold. I straightened up, met his gaze, and said quietly, "No. You watch. Yours." The silence that followed was thick, electric. We stood there, father and child, years of unspoken words pressed between us. I thought he might yell. I thought he might soften. But he did neither. He just stared at me, cold, unreadable, before finally picking up his glass again. "Suit yourself," he muttered, turning toward the door. "But don't forget, family doesn't forget things like this." And then he was gone. I stayed in that kitchen long after, staring at the empty doorway, my hands trembling not from fear, but from the rush of finally saying what I'd swallowed for too long. When I finally walked back into the dining room, it felt like nothing had changed. The table was alive with chatter, spoons clinking against dessert bowls, the faint sound of Christmas music humming in the background. But for me, everything was different. I slid back into my chair quietly. My stepmother pushed a plate of pie toward me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I muttered a thanks, though my stomach was in knots. Dad had taken his seat again, too, laughing at something my uncle said, as if the conversation we'd just had in the kitchen had evaporated into thin air, but I couldn't unhear it. His voice, low and sharp, "Family doesn't forget things like this." The words replayed over and over in my head, like a broken record. They weren't a warning. They were a threat, and that's when the choice began to take shape. I stared down at the pie in front of me. The flaky crust, the neat slice, the dollop of whipped cream someone had added with care. It should have felt comforting, familiar. Instead, it looked staged. Like the whole evening. Like this entire gathering was a performance, and I was the unwilling guest star in a show about loyalty and obedience. I thought about what it would mean to stay, to swallow my pride, keep smiling, play along with the script he'd written. It would be easy in the short term. No drama, no scene, just silence. But silence was what had been killing me slowly all these months. And then I thought about leaving, about standing up, coat in hand, and walking out the door, claiming my own script for once. It would be loud, even if I didn't say a word. People would notice. They'd whisper. He'd fume. But it would be mine. My choice. The two paths lay in front of me, both heavy, both irreversible. I glanced around the room at the people laughing, their faces glowing in the warm light. Some were blood, others weren't, but all of them sat comfortably under his roof, wrapped in his version of family. I realized in that moment that no matter what I did, I'd never fully belong here again. The fracture was too deep. I reached for my coat. Slowly, deliberately. I could feel eyes on me as I stood. The room didn't fall silent, but the volume dipped just enough to let me know they were watching. Dad's gaze locked with mine across the table. That smile, sharp, rehearsed, was gone now. For once, he didn't look in control. I didn't say a word. I didn't know him that I just slid my arms into my coat, lifted my bag, and walked toward the door. Each step felt like it echoed, like it was chiseling something permanent into stone. When the cold air hit my face outside, I exhaled for the first time all night. The snow was falling heavier now, quieting the world around me, wrapping the street in silence. And in that silence, I realized I'd made my choice. I don't know how long I stood there on the sidewalk, watching the snow pile up on the driveway. My breath came out in little clouds, and for the first time that evening, I wasn't holding it in. I wasn't bracing myself for his next move. The house behind me glowed warm and golden, like a picture on a Christmas card. From a distance, it looked perfect. Laughter, family, food, love. But I knew the truth. That warmth wasn't for me. It never had been. Not really. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking. The crunch of my boots on the icy ground was the only sound, steady and grounding. With each step, I felt the weight lifting, not gone completely, but lighter, like I wasn't carrying his story anymore. I was carrying mine. The thing about nights like this is they change you. I had gone in thinking maybe, just maybe this invitation meant something different. That there was space for reconciliation. That he had seen me, not as an obstacle, not as a disobedient child, but as a person. But I left with something better. Clarity. That I finally understood that love isn't proven by obedience. Family isn't measured by blood or last names or whether you hand over what someone feels entitled to. It's measured by respect, by choice. And he had made his choice a long time ago. Tonight, I finally made mine. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. Because it did. Walking away from someone who should have loved you unconditionally, that's not freedom without a price. The ache settles in your chest, and some days, it will feel unbearable. But ache is better than chains. Ache heals. Chains don't. And as the snow fell harder, covering my footprints, I realized something else. Maybe I'd never get the family I thought I deserved. But that didn't mean I'd never have one. Because family can be built, chosen, created from people who actually want you at their table, not because of what you can give them, but because of who you are. I paused at the end of the street and looked back just once. The house was smaller. Now, the glow softer. For years, that house had defined me. Tonight, I finally walked away from it. Not as a runaway, not as a cast out, but as someone who decided their worth wasn't up for debate anymore. And that was the real gift.